Some messages arrive a few seconds too late. Others arrive to the wrong person at exactly the right time. Alicia Brooks stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of her small Chicago apartment, the fluorescent light above her sink flickering with a faint electric hum. Her hands trembled as she pressed a cold washcloth against her face. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Inside, the silence felt heavier than stone. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Her phone rested beside the sink, its cracked screen glowing in the dim room. Alicia had spent the last year convincing herself that things would get better, that tomorrow would be different, that kindness, patience, and understanding could fix problems that seemed to grow larger every week. Tonight, for the first time, she wasn't sure she believed that anymore. Her chest tightened as she unlocked her phone. There was only one person she wanted to talk to. One friend who always answered. One person who would understand. With shaking fingers, she opened her messages and typed 4 simple words. He broke my nose. Alicia stared at the sentence for several seconds. Then she pressed send. The message disappeared. Delivered. She exhaled slowly and set the phone down beside the sink. 30 seconds passed. Then 60. Rain continued to fall outside. Somewhere in the distance, a siren echoed through the city. Alicia closed her eyes. She felt exhausted. Not physically, spiritually. Like every ounce of strength she'd carried for years had finally slipped through her fingers. Then her phone vibrated. Once. Alicia looked down. A reply. She frowned. The contact name was missing. Confused, she opened the message. Stay where you are. Don't tell him you contacted anyone. Alicia blinked. Her heartbeat quickened. That wasn't her friend. She scrolled upward. The number was unfamiliar. Her stomach dropped. She had sent the text to the wrong person. For a moment, she considered apologizing and blocking the number. But before she could type a response, another message appeared. Are you safe right now? Alicia stared at the screen. The words felt strange. Direct. Calm. Different from the sympathy she expected. Whoever this person was, they weren't asking questions out of curiosity. They sounded like someone assessing a situation. Someone making decisions. Rain streaked down the window behind her. The bathroom felt smaller. The silence deeper. Alicia typed slowly. Wrong number. Sorry. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then another reply. Maybe. But you still need help. Alicia froze. Somewhere nearly 12 miles away, on the top floor of a glass tower overlooking downtown Chicago, Ethan Kong sat at the head of a conference table surrounded by men worth millions of dollars. Contracts lay open before him. Phones buzzed. Conversations waited for his approval. Yet none of them held his attention. His dark eyes remained fixed on a single message glowing on his screen. For words written by a stranger. For words he couldn't ignore. And for the first time that evening, the most feared man in the city quietly canceled the meeting. For nearly 30 seconds, nobody spoke. The executives seated around the conference table exchanged uncertain glances, while Ethan Kong remained motionless at the head of the room. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Chicago skyline glittering beneath the rain, but his attention never left the screen in his hand. The message from the stranger lingered there like a warning he could not ignore. One of his senior advisors finally cleared his throat. Mr. Kong, should we continue with the Harbor District acquisition? Normally, Ethan would have answered immediately. Every minute of his day was scheduled. Every decision calculated. Every meeting carried consequences worth millions of dollars. Tonight was different. Without looking up, he closed the folder in front of him. The sound echoed through the room. Reschedule everything, he said calmly. Several men blinked in surprise. Everything? Another executive asked. Ethan slowly stood. At 6'3", dressed in a charcoal suit tailored with military precision, he carried the kind of presence that made people reconsider their next words. Everything, he repeated. Nobody argued. Within seconds, laptops snapped shut and chairs rolled backward. The meeting dissolved in stunned silence. Ethan waited until the room was empty before returning his attention to the phone. The stranger had not responded. Rain streaked down the glass behind him. Chicago's lights blurred into rivers of gold and white. He typed another message. Are you alone? Several seconds passed. Then the reply appeared. Yes. Ethan studied the answer. Short, careful, guarded. The response told him almost as much as the original message. People who felt safe usually volunteered information. People who felt trapped measured every word. His phone vibrated again. I am sorry. I really texted the wrong number. You do not need to worry about me. Ethan leaned back in his chair. The sentence sounded familiar. He had heard versions of it his entire life. From people trying to hide fear. From people convinced nobody could help. From people who had stopped expecting anyone to care. He glanced toward a framed photograph resting on a shelf across the office. It was the only personal item in the room. Most visitors never noticed it. A woman stood smiling beside a younger version of Ethan. Her expression carried warmth that time could not erase. For a moment, something softened in his eyes. Then it disappeared. He returned his focus to the conversation. The city outside rumbled beneath distant thunder. Ethan typed carefully. You sent that message for a reason. Another pause followed. Longer this time. Nearly 2 full minutes passed before the screen lit again. I do not know why I sent it. Maybe because I did not know who else to talk to. Ethan exhaled slowly. There it was. Not the whole truth, but enough. Across the city, Alicia sat curled on the edge of her couch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She did not understand why she kept answering. The stranger had no name, no explanation, no reason to stay involved. Yet every message felt steady, like a hand reaching through darkness. Then a final text appeared on her screen. Read it carefully, Ethan had written. If at any point tonight you feel uncomfortable, unsafe, or afraid, send me one word. Any word. I will see it. Alicia stared at the message while rain tapped softly against the window. For reasons she could not explain, she believed him. Alicia did not sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, her thoughts pulled her back to the same question. Why was a stranger still answering? At 3:15 in the morning, the rain finally stopped, leaving the city wrapped in a damp silence. She sat near the living room window with a cup of tea growing cold between her hands. Her phone rested beside her. The screen remained dark for nearly an hour. Then it lit up. A new message. What do you do for work? Alicia hesitated before typing. I work at a senior care center on the north side. Another response arrived almost immediately. Do you enjoy it? Alicia stared at the question. Nobody had asked her that in a very long time. Most people asked how much she earned, how many hours she worked, whether she planned to move somewhere better. Nobody asked whether she actually liked what she did. She typed slowly. I do. The residents are kind. Some of them do not have family. I try to make their days easier. Several seconds passed. Then another message appeared. That sounds like important work. Alicia felt something strange in her chest. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Respect. She realized she had not heard that kind of respect directed at her in years. Across the city, Ethan Kong sat alone in his office. The building was nearly empty now. Most lights had been turned off. Only a desk lamp illuminated the dark wood surfaces around him. He read every message carefully. People revealed themselves through details, through what they chose to mention and what they avoided. Alicia never complained about money, never blamed others, never exaggerated her problems. Yet beneath every sentence he sensed exhaustion, the kind that accumulated over years instead of days. Ethan opened another application on his phone. Within moments, information began appearing on his screen. Public records, employment verification, basic background details. Nothing illegal, nothing hidden, just enough to confirm she was real. Alicia Brooks, 27 years old, employee at Lakeshore Senior Living Center. No criminal record, no history of complaints, no signs of deception. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Something about the profile matched the voice behind the messages. Honest, quiet, unremarkable to most people. The type of person society often overlooked. His phone vibrated again. This time the message came from Alicia. Can I ask you something? Ethan answered with a single word. Yes. A full minute passed before her reply arrived. Why are you still here? Ethan looked at the question for several seconds. It was not the first time someone had asked him that. But tonight the answer felt different. He typed carefully. Because somebody should be. Alicia read the response twice. Then a third time. Tears threatened to form, but she blinked them away. The apartment remained silent around her. Outside, dawn was beginning to brighten the edge of the sky. For the first time in months, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Not safety, not happiness, something smaller, yet somehow just as powerful. Hope. Neither of them knew it yet, but that single conversation was already changing both of their lives. By 7 o'clock that morning, Chicago was awake. Traffic flowed through rain-soaked streets. Coffee shops filled with commuters. Delivery trucks rolled through narrow alleys. Life moved forward as if nothing had changed. Yet for Alicia Brooks, everything felt different. She arrived at Lakeshore Senior Living Center 20 minutes early, something she had not done in months. The brick building stood beside Lake Michigan, its windows glowing warmly against the gray morning sky. Inside, the familiar scent of coffee and fresh laundry greeted her. Residents smiled as she passed through the lobby. Mrs. Reynolds waved from her favorite chair near the fireplace. Mr. Patterson complained about the weather exactly as he did every morning. Normally, Alicia would have smiled automatically and continued through her routine. Today she noticed every face, every greeting, every small moment of kindness. Perhaps because she had spent so long feeling invisible, that simple human connection suddenly felt extraordinary. During her lunch break, she sat alone in a quiet staff room overlooking the parking lot. Her phone remained beside her sandwich. She told herself she was not waiting for a message, yet every few minutes her eyes drifted toward the screen. Finally it lit up. "How was your day?" Alicia smiled despite herself. "Better than yesterday." She hesitated before sending another message. "Thank you." Several seconds later a response arrived. "For what?" Alicia stared at the words. The answer seemed obvious, yet somehow difficult to explain. "For answering. For listening. For staying." Across the city, Ethan read the message from the back seat of a black SUV moving through downtown traffic. His security team discussed schedules and appointments around him, but he barely listened. Since sunrise, he had reviewed reports, approved contracts, and spoken with attorneys. Yet part of his attention remained fixed on a woman he had never met. His phone vibrated again. Nobody usually stays. Ethan looked out the window. Glass towers reflected the cloudy sky above the city. For a moment, he was no longer 35 years old. He was 12 again, standing beside a hospital bed, listening to promises from adults who never returned. The memory lasted only a second. Then it vanished. He typed a reply. "The right people do." Alicia read the sentence twice. Something about it unsettled her. Not because it sounded false, because it sounded true. More true than anything she had heard in a long time. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. Then she typed the question she had been avoiding. "Who are you?" The answer did not come immediately. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Finally 3 dots appeared. Alicia leaned forward slightly. Ethan stared at the screen. Most people would answer with a name. Most people would offer an explanation. He chose different words. "Someone who thinks you deserve better." Alicia felt her breath catch. The staff room suddenly seemed very quiet. Outside, sunlight finally broke through the clouds, casting silver reflections across the wet parking lot. At that exact moment, neither of them noticed another message arriving on a secure phone inside Ethan's office. A private investigator had completed a preliminary report. The file contained details about Alicia's life she had never shared, and one sentence near the bottom immediately erased the calm expression from Ethan Kang's face. The message arrived at exactly 2:17 in the afternoon. Ethan read the report once, then a second time. His expression remained calm, but everyone seated around him noticed the change. The room grew silent. The investigator had uncovered a pattern. Not a crime, not a scandal, something far more troubling. Over the past 3 years, Alicia Brooks had gradually withdrawn from almost every part of her life. Friends she once saw weekly had disappeared from her contacts. Family members spoke with her less and less. Social activities ended. Community events stopped. Even her church attendance, once regular, had quietly faded away. Piece by piece, her world had become smaller, isolated, predictable, controlled by circumstances she rarely discussed. Ethan closed the report and stared out the window. He had seen the pattern before. People did not become invisible overnight. It happened one compromise at a time, one excuse at a time, one sacrifice at a time. His phone vibrated. A message from Alicia. "I think I should stop texting you." Ethan read it without reacting. Then another message followed. "You have been kind, but this is not your problem." Ethan stood and walked toward the glass wall overlooking the city. Nearly 40 floors below, thousands of people moved through crowded streets. Most would never know his name. Most would never cross his path. Yet somehow one wrong number had changed the direction of his entire week. He typed a response. "Is that what you want?" Several minutes passed. No answer. The silence itself became an answer. Across town, Alicia sat in her car in the employee parking lot. Her shift had ended 20 minutes earlier, but she had not driven home. The engine remained off. The afternoon sun reflected across the windshield. Her phone rested in her lap. She knew she should stop. This strange connection made no sense. She did not know his name, did not know his age, did not know why he cared. Yet every time she considered ending the conversation, a deeper fear surfaced. The fear of returning to exactly the way things had been before. Alone, unheard, invisible. Her screen lit up again. This time the message was longer. You do not owe me an explanation. You do not owe me trust. But do not convince yourself that your problems are too small for someone to care about. Alicia felt her throat tighten. She stared through the windshield at rows of parked cars shimmering beneath the afternoon heat. Nobody had ever said those words to her. Not like that. Not without expecting something in return. She slowly typed a reply. I am trying to figure out why this happened. Ethan answered almost immediately. So am I. For the first time all day, Alicia laughed softly. A genuine laugh. Brief but real. The sound surprised even her. Yet hundreds of yards away, another development was already unfolding. Ethan's private investigator had continued digging deeper. A second report was being assembled, one that included names, addresses, financial records, connections, details Alicia herself did not fully understand. And at the top of the report, highlighted in red, was a single sentence that convinced Ethan Kong this was no longer a random conversation. The next morning arrived wrapped in low gray clouds drifting across the Chicago skyline. Alicia woke after only a few hours of sleep. Her phone was still in her hand. For a moment, she stared at the ceiling of her apartment, trying to remember when a stranger had become the first person she thought about each morning. A notification waited on her screen. Good morning. Simple. 2 words. Yet they made her smile before she could stop herself. She typed back while sitting on the edge of her bed. Good morning. You are awake early. The reply appeared almost instantly. I have been awake for hours. Alicia shook her head softly. Whoever this man was, he seemed to exist in a world where sleep was optional. She moved through her morning routine, made coffee, packed her lunch, and prepared for work. Everything felt ordinary until her phone vibrated again. What time do you leave work today? Alicia paused. The question felt different, more personal. She considered ignoring it. Instead, she answered honestly. Around 5:30. Why? Several minutes passed before a response arrived. Because I think we should meet. Alicia froze. The coffee mug in her hand stopped halfway to her lips. Meet. The word echoed inside her mind. Suddenly, the reality of the situation became impossible to ignore. She had spent days talking to a complete stranger. A stranger who somehow knew exactly what to say whenever she felt lost. A stranger who made her feel seen. Yet she still did not know his last name. She did not know what he looked like. She did not even know if she should trust him. Her phone vibrated again. Only if you are comfortable. No pressure. Alicia stared out the kitchen window. Cars rolled through the wet streets below. A city full of strangers moved through another ordinary morning. Why did this one stranger feel different? Across downtown Chicago, Ethan Kong stood beside a conference table while several advisors reviewed reports. None of them realized his attention was elsewhere. The second investigation file sat closed beside him. He had read every page. He knew enough now to understand that Alicia's situation was far more serious than she realized. Yet he also knew that trust could not be demanded. It had to be earned. His phone lit up. A message from Alicia. I do not even know your name. For the first time in days, Ethan smiled. A small, genuine smile that surprised even him. He typed carefully. Ethan. A full minute passed before her response arrived. Just Ethan? He looked out at the city below and shook his head. Then he answered. For now. Alicia laughed softly. The sound filled her empty apartment. Then another message appeared. I can meet after work. Public place. 1 hour. Coffee shop near Lakeshore Senior Living Center. Ethan read the words and slowly closed his eyes. The meeting he had been waiting for was finally happening. What neither of them knew was that someone else had already noticed the unusual pattern of messages. And before the day was over, events already set in motion would make their first meeting impossible to forget. At 5:28 that afternoon, Alicia stepped out of Lakeshore Senior Living Center with her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. The sky above Chicago had cleared, leaving streaks of gold sunlight reflecting across the glass buildings downtown. She adjusted the strap of her purse and glanced at her phone for the third time in 2 minutes. No new messages. Just the address of the coffee shop 2 blocks away. The walk should have felt simple. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something she could not explain. Every question she had pushed aside over the past few days returned at once. What if Ethan was not who he claimed to be? What if this had all been a mistake? What if she arrived and nobody was there? The coffee shop sat on a quiet corner facing a small public park. Warm lights glowed through the windows. The smell of fresh pastries drifted through the open doorway. Alicia stepped inside and immediately scanned the room. Students worked on laptops. A retired couple shared pie near the window. A businessman spoke quietly into a headset. No one stood out. Her phone vibrated. "I am here." Alicia looked around again. Then another message arrived. "Turn around." Slowly she did. Near the back of the room sat a man in a dark suit. He had been there the entire time. Calm. Composed. Watching without staring. Ethan Kong rose to his feet. For a second, neither of them moved. Alicia had imagined this moment dozens of times. Yet reality was different. He looked younger than she expected. More approachable. There was power in the way he carried himself, but none of the arrogance she had prepared herself to see. Ethan crossed the room and stopped a respectful distance away. "Alicia," he asked. His voice was exactly as she imagined. Steady. Controlled. She nodded. "Ethan." A faint smile appeared on his face. "Just Ethan, remember?" To her surprise, she laughed. The tension broke instantly. They ordered coffee and found a table near the window overlooking the park. For several minutes they talked about ordinary things. Work. Favorite restaurants. Chicago weather. The conversation flowed naturally, as though they had known each other longer than a few days. Yet Alicia kept noticing something unusual. Ethan listened. Really listened. Not waiting for his turn to speak. Not checking his phone. Not scanning the room. Listening. The realization caught her off guard. Then a shadow crossed Ethan's expression. His phone vibrated once. He glanced at the screen and immediately set it face down on the table. Alicia noticed. "Everything okay?" she asked. Ethan held her gaze for a moment. "Not yet," he replied quietly. The answer puzzled her. Before she could ask another question, a black SUV rolled slowly past the coffee shop window outside. Then another. Ethan's eyes followed them briefly before returning to her. The warmth in his expression remained, but something else appeared beneath it now. Concern. Deep, genuine concern. For the first time since they met, Alicia realized Ethan knew something she did not, and whatever it was had just arrived. The atmosphere inside the coffee shop shifted so subtly that most people would never have noticed it. Alicia certainly did not. She followed Ethan's gaze toward the street, then back to him. "What is going on?" she asked quietly. Ethan rested his coffee cup on the table and considered his answer. He had spent years solving problems before they reached him, anticipating threats, reading patterns, protecting people who mattered. The difference was that Alicia had become someone who mattered, and that realization unsettled him more than he cared to admit. "There are some things I learned about your situation," he said carefully. Alicia frowned. "What do you mean?" Ethan remained calm. "I mean, you have spent a long time carrying responsibilities that were never supposed to be yours alone." Alicia looked away toward the window. The late afternoon sunlight reflected across the glass. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong. Yet a part of her knew exactly what he meant. For years she had been making excuses for circumstances that kept shrinking her world. She had convinced herself that endurance was strength, that silence was peace. Ethan's phone vibrated again. This time he picked it up. A single message appeared on the screen. Confirmation received. Multiple reports documented. Witnesses verified. Ethan read it once and locked the phone. The final piece had fallen into place. Nothing dramatic. No confrontation. No threats. Just facts. Verified facts. The kind that could not be argued with. Alicia watched him carefully. "You still have not told me who you are." Ethan smiled faintly. "I own a few companies." Alicia raised an eyebrow. "A few? More than a few." She laughed. "That is not an answer." "No," Ethan admitted. "It is not." For a moment neither spoke. Outside, the black SUVs remained parked across the street. Their presence would have drawn attention from anyone paying close enough attention. Yet inside the coffee shop, life continued normally. Students typed on laptops. Espresso machines hissed. Music played softly overhead. Then Alicia's phone vibrated. She glanced down and immediately felt her stomach tighten. A familiar name appeared on the screen. She did not answer. The call ended. Seconds later, another call came through. Then another. Ethan noticed the change in her expression. You do not have to answer that. Alicia looked at him. How do you know? Ethan held her gaze. Because somebody who respects you does not need to call 6 times in 3 minutes. The words landed with unexpected force. Alicia stared at the phone in silence. Nobody had ever said it so plainly before. No lectures. No judgment. Just truth. Simple and impossible to ignore. Across the table, Ethan reached into his jacket and removed a sealed envelope. He placed it gently between them. What is this? Alicia asked. Information, he replied. Verified information. Resources. Contacts. People who can help if you decide you want help. Alicia looked down at the envelope, then back at Ethan. Her eyes filled with emotion she could no longer hide. For the first time, she realized he had never been trying to rescue her. He had been trying to give her something far more valuable. A choice. 6 months later, the first warm days of spring had returned to Chicago. Sunlight poured through the large front windows of a community resource center on the north side. The building was modest, but every room carried a sense of purpose. Families gathered around tables. Volunteers answered phones. Counselors met with people searching for a fresh start. Above the entrance hung a simple sign. Brooks Community Outreach Center. Alicia stood near the reception desk, greeting visitors with the same kindness she had once offered residents at Lakeshore Senior Living Center. Yet something about her had changed. The uncertainty that used to shadow her eyes was gone. In its place stood quiet confidence. Not because life had become perfect, not because every challenge had disappeared, but because she had finally learned that asking for help was not weakness. It was courage. Across the room, a young woman nervously filled out paperwork. Alicia recognized the expression immediately. The hesitation, the fear, the feeling of believing you were completely alone. She walked over and offered a warm smile. You are in the right place, she said softly. The young woman looked relieved. Sometimes the most powerful words were also the simplest. Later that afternoon, after the last appointment ended, Alicia stepped outside onto the front sidewalk. The city buzzed around her. Cars passed. Children laughed in a nearby park. The lake shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. Her phone vibrated. One message. She smiled before even opening it. Running late. 5 minutes. Alicia slipped the phone into her pocket. Exactly 7 minutes later, a black SUV pulled quietly to the curb. Ethan Kong stepped out wearing a dark jacket and no tie. To anyone passing by, he looked like a successful businessman finishing another workday. Nobody would have guessed how many lives his influence touched every week. Alicia walked toward him. You are 2 minutes late, she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. I thought it was 5. I checked. He laughed. The sound still surprised her every time she heard it. They began walking slowly toward the park. The evening air carried the scent of fresh grass and lake water. For a while neither spoke. They simply enjoyed the quiet. Finally, Alicia glanced at him. Can I ask you something? Ethan nodded. You can ask anything. She looked ahead toward the setting sun. Why did you answer? Ethan already knew which message she meant. The first one. The wrong number. The accident that changed everything. He remained silent for several seconds. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out an old phone. The screen displayed 4 words that had never been deleted. He handed it to her. Alicia read them again. The same message that started it all. She looked back at him. Ethan's expression softened. Because years ago, he said quietly, someone I loved needed help, and nobody answered. The city noise seemed to fade away. Alicia stared at him, understanding at last. This had never been about rescuing her. It had never been about power, influence, or control. It was about a choice. One person choosing not to look away when someone else was hurting. A choice that had echoed outward and changed countless lives. The sun slipped lower across the horizon. Ethan put the phone away. Alicia smiled. Side by side, they continued walking as the evening light painted the city gold. And on that day, the world remembered what dignity looks like.